Finance meeting to order at 9:33. Roll call, please.
Markham,
Here.
Middleton,
Here.
Quarles,
Here.
McGillivray,
Here.
Powell, Miller,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Cowell, Zach.
Here. Motion carries.
I'm sorry, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Okay. Roll call. I'm sorry. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need an approval of the minutes, please. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the agenda. Need Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Long supporting. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Do I have any public comment today? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Communications, I need a motion. Commissioner Miller, supported by Commissioner Middleton. Any discussion on communications? I had something on the purchasing. Okay, it was actually Parks, and looking at the software that we have. Is there somebody here? Dan, you wanna come up here?
Dan Stencil, Executive Officer, Oakland County Parks, and Phil Castoni, our Chief of Business Operations. This is a 5-year contract for the software support system for all of our revenue processing. And don't have any other
Okay.
points.
For the software support, right?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
whole system, I think.
When did we put the software in? And
10
is it-
years, about 10 years ago.
And it's,
And we process about $10 million a year through this, and we've been pleased with the service that's been provided. Obviously, it's a single source provider, but it's been worth our investment.
okay, that was my question, whether, have you explored any other systems, or is there anything like this out there?
Well, there's plenty of other alternatives. The market's growing. We continually look at the other software packages, but all the different operations we have, we're trying to get one software that can do everything between golf courses, campgrounds, our recreation programs, and there's not a lot who can do all of them under one package and do it as efficiently as they have. And the amount of time we've spent with our staff training them, getting our operations customized with the software, to redo the whole package would be quite an undertaking, and if there's nothing wrong with the software, we haven't had the need to move, so.
Thank you. I always look when we're investing so much, whether we've done that cost-benefit analysis. Thank you. Any other questions about communications? Seeing none, let's call the roll. Oh, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Now I have, there's no consent, regular agenda. First item is McHugh versus Oakland County. And
Closed session.
we're going to, okay. I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Commissioner Middleton, supported by Commissioner Kowal. We'll see you in a few. I need a roll call for the closed session.
Markham,
Here.
Middleton,
Roll
Middleton,
call.
Yes.
Closed session.
Quarles,
Here, yes.
McGillivray,
Here.
Howell, Miller,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Koa. Here. Zach.
Here.
You know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're back in open session. I need a motion to support, a motion to move the recommendations that was discussed in closed session.
So moved.
Commissioner McGilvray, Middleton, any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Middleton,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes. Motion carries. Next item, we have Board of Commissioners, Human Resources Wages of the Labor Agreement for the employees represented by Oakland County Employees Union, OCEU, affiliated with IBEW Local 58, AFL-CIO. And we have April Lynch and Julie Fisher. And I need a motion. Commissioner Miller with Commissioner Quarles supporting.
All right, so I also have some members of the WRC here as well if you have more questions. But IBEW has just ratified their contract last week on Thursday, I believe. One of the things that we are working through with not only their union, but all the unions in line with the COM study is to reevaluate where we are wages as it relates to competitive market. So I'd just like to give a little overview of that and then offer some questions. I have finance here as well, if you have more specific questions. You're gonna hear very much similar to what I said during the COM study work session, is what we're in a place where a lot of other government agencies are as well, where we are now having to be competitive with the private market. So before, we all remember, it was amazing to get into some kind of government setting because you had a pension, you had a stable work environment, you had free health care. That no longer exists anymore. Many places have lost their pensions, it's now defined contribution, we're one of them, no retiree health care, paying for health care. So we're in the same market now as competitive, as a competitive market. So we really focused on starting to get a strategy around how we can retain and attract quality employees. And so we did the same thing that we did with the COM study. We were able to do a lot of that internally with the help, in particular with WRC. They're the biggest chunk of IBEW to take a look at some of the challenges that they've been facing in retaining and recruitment and making sure that our wages were competitive. It's interesting, we're even finding now that those of our employees that have licenses, that other communities are getting the list from like the DEQ and sending out letters saying, well, we pay more, come work for us. So it's we're competing now with other government agencies as well. So we're gonna probably do that same letter, right? So what we did is we took a look at all of their wages and did some adjustments across the board to make sure that we were in line with some other communities and in particular places where we were losing folks, but then just knowing the market and where we are, we adjusted that. So that was for fiscal year 20, and then 21 and 22, we have a little bit of a different method for them there. So one of the things that has also come up, not only are we having to look competitively at wages, we need to look at our whole total rewards package. So not just wages, but also are we competitive with our benefits and things of that nature. So one of the things that had come up in this union and has come up as well is we need to take a look at our pension contributions as well. So they've opted to increase their pension contribution by 1% in lieu of wage increase for 21, and then a wage reopener as well, just to make sure that we're in line with general increases, and then a wage reopener for 2022. So that is the high level overview. And again, WRC is here as well as finance, if you have any other questions that I can't answer.
Do I have questions from the committee? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Still morning, so make sure. So you mentioned the wage assessment and to make the wages competitive. So we did that for the represented unit as well, because I know that the wage
Yep.
study, it was not including them.
No, we did it on our own, because it was
Okay.
easier to find, and we're actually doing that with the other unions as well, so that when I come with the comp study, that we have a total picture for
Okay.
finance as well as across the board. So we're working right now with the nurses as well as another division as well. The deputies tend to be good, in a good place, because we've had to make sure that we were in line for 312 and just keeping up with that market as well. So there'll be some other adjustments with the other unions.
All right. I do have a few more questions. So so how do we sit competitively with the current wage increases when this goes into effect?
I'll keep using WRC as an example, and I don't know if any of you guys, the whole team of them here, but I feel they all have felt that we're in line now with being able to keep and retain.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have to keep looking though, we're gonna have to keep
Right.
playing around with that. I could see MOUs coming down the pike if we find that we're struggling in some areas. In particular, I think some of the bigger areas that we increase is the experienced trades. Those were huge for us to
Yeah.
really modify. So there were some bigger increases there just to make sure that we were competitive with the outside market.
Okay. So I noticed, and I've asked this question in the past, of course, before you were here. It's for the grievance arbitration procedure. Is George Rommel still doing that? I mean,
He
I met him
is, yes.
6 years ago, and he's sharp as a whip.
Yep.
You know, I just didn't know he was still doing
He
that.
is.
Great gentleman.
He's kicking, yep.
Yeah, and hopefully stays around a lot longer,
Yeah,
there's a lot to learn
he's
from him.
awesome, yep.
These are just housekeeping
Nope,
questions
feel
I had.
free.
So I noticed that the special conferences was taken out of Exhibit C, Section 4, for, to have a special conference.
It was moved to Section 1, the Labor Management Agreement.
All right, thank you. I thought I saw something similar, but I just was wondering why it was taken
Yep.
out or moved. Then I noticed in the Appendix A for the, was it the any benefit plan improvements applied to non-representative, was kind of like a Me Too clause. So that was taken out as a whole out of this for the medical?
No, it's just moved further down. If you,
Okay.
you'll find it, I think, after each one of the
Okay,
appendixes.
all right. I just always have questions when
Yep.
something's taken out.
No problem.
And I do get when they're moved, because sometimes they're in a spot where they
Right.
don't belong, right? And I believe, so that answers those questions, the healthcare stuff. Oh, and then last question, which I believe I have my own answer, but I wanna ask it, is the classifications that were taken out of the contract, are those not like used classifications anymore?
Correct.
But I kinda figured that, but I wanted to ask.
Yep.
Thank you. No more questions.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, I guess, more of a general one, and I probably should have asked it at the presentation last Thursday. I would think the compensation would be a big part of the overall package, but the study only looked at wages that was presented. So is it because it's so much more complicated when you get into the other compensations and whatnot, and that has to be taken a look at separately? Because, I would think that to be competitive, you have to have that benefit package as well. So I was just wondering about, I don't know the machinations behind doing all these studies in the HR thing. Maybe you can give me a little bit better explanation.
I'm not sure that that's just what the study showed was just for wages, so, but I think that we'll be looking at the benefits and the total rewards, which is no more than even just benefits. It's, are we competitive with time off? Are we competitive with professional development? Are we competitive with work-life balance, working from home, all of those things? So I think over the next year, we're gonna be looking at all of that.
Commissioner Markham.
Thank you. So as I was reading through the red line
Yeah.
proposal, it appears to me that there is an emphasis on fairness and competitiveness, and also there's more of a commitment between management and workers. I mean, I'm just kind of getting that sense. Things like allowing the union representatives to have more time available to do their union jobs. Can you speak to that a little bit? Was that actually intentional? Was that something that came from the workforce, or am I just reading that wrong or right, or?
No, I think you're reading it right. I think both parties wanted to develop a good relationship. So that was recognizing that, maybe the union representatives needed some more time to do what they need to do. So I think you're reading that with the intent behind it.
Okay, there were several points through
Yes.
the
Yes.
beginning of this where it changed a lot. And
Right.
it appears that it was intentional, and I wanted to just bring that forward and
Yep.
So
Have
for,
you discuss
I
it?
would like to add to that, for a long time, the union was more of a house union, if you will, as we call them sometimes. And with the IBEW coming in, I think it brought more of a framework for them as well. So that's one of the side benefits of them moving to IBEW.
Thank you.
Commissioner Quarles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is just really for clarity. I know we have a number of unions with that. Which one is the lead union? Or do we do that anymore where we negotiate with one union, pretty much establishing whatever the baseline is gonna be?
Yeah, I think we used to do that.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah.
It's not,
It's not.
okay.
A lot of them have Me Too's, which is helpful for a general increase, so, which is actually not as common. So it actually provides our organization a little more flexibility.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner McGilvray.
Do you have any idea what the vote was by the union members when they voted for the contract?
No, I don't.
Other questions? I have a question, and it's really toward Water Resource Commissioner Jim Nash. You want to come up? We've heard for a while, and certainly sitting on, from employees, and we heard at public comment about keeping employees, keeping them happy, you finding staff. Is this going to help your department retain? Are your employees happier with this, as you know?
I think they will be, and again, some of this is it's anticipation. They've been waiting this for a while. They've been hearing about something coming. It's always been linked to the other job study, and so we want to make sure that we are keeping people, and this will, I think, definitely help. What our issues are that as soon as one of our folks gets a new certification or a new level above, then they get all these inundations of letters saying, "Hey, come work for us. We can pay you more." And we build from the bottom. So when we hire folks, some of those folks are going to be on our top in 10, 15 years. So we got to make sure that we keep them going and making sure that we keep a good atmosphere. And I work hard at that. And that we pay enough to keep the folks here. And that's very, very important for us. So I think we're definitely going in a very good direction. And I want to thank them for having us included more than we had been in the past. Kelsey Cook is my Drainage District Legal Counsel, and she also works with all the issues around labor. And she's now been allowed to go to more meetings and be involved with the negotiation, and that's really helped us. And we feel much more connected too. So both sides really, I want to make sure both sides are feeling good about coming into this new contract, and we want to work with them as this new contract is fulfilled.
So we're hopeful.
I'm very hopeful, and I think we're going to be doing well. Again, people love this organization. I have folks that have been there for 42, 44 years, and that just shows that we have a good organization here, and that predates me by a long stretch. So my management team is very involved in making sure that we have the best team we can, and I think we're doing well.
Commissioner Miller.
I just have a comment. I appreciate Commissioner Nash's always fighting for working people and recognizing the value of that, and we've heard that a lot talking about, and then appreciate the new administration fighting for the same thing. And I will say, being a negotiator for 7 years, you always hear it's always a good contract when both parties walk away not happy. This is the first time you hear where both parties are happy.
It's even better.
Making history already.
That's right.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Quarles?
Yes.
Gillibrand?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Cowell? Yes. Markham?
Yes.
Middleton?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Item number 3, budget debrief, discussion, process, outcome, and structure, discussion. So I'm going to start off. So we did some different things this year for budget, and I want to hear feedback, as does Mike and team, saying, what did you like? What would you like to improve upon? What are things that we like, we didn't like? Where do we want to go from for future budget process discussion? So, Commissioner Miller.
I'll just say that we have to give an applaud to the board staff for doing an amazing job for setting up the meetings and navigating everybody's schedule. it's difficult as it is. And just for everything they've done, because most of us are new and learning the different things in the budget and what line items mean and the questions they answered. So I appreciate them, and I'm sure everybody else does. That's the first thing I have to say.
Thank you.
But yeah, I appreciate it. And then I enjoyed it because you got the one-on-one with each group that we met with, and you got to ask the questions, and it wasn't like a hard conversation. It wasn't hostile. It was just this is what it is, you know. So I felt it was good because it was more intimate. Wasn't more of like a attack. It wouldn't seem like that. We're just asking just for information. So for me personally, I learned a lot, and it helped me, you know, in the decisions making and questions going forward for the county and knowing more for the position that we were elected to.
Other comments or
I guess,
Commissioner Middleton, then Kowal.
you know, I have to give Lynn a lot of credit. When we're doing those budget hearings, we're throwing numbers at her, and her head must be just swimming because she can come up with those numbers just like that, and it does move the process along, so.
Commissioner Kowal.
Well, I'd just like to say that it was, I think, a very thorough process, and I'd like to thank our committee chair for her part in this, and of course our staff and putting all the analysis together. So I think it was a very thorough, very good process. Just in general, though, I'm still having issues about not having fiscal notes with the, as we have had in the past. So that's something I guess I need to follow up on more separately. But overall, I think it was a really good process.
Other Commissioner Markham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really liked the fact that each department, we did an in-depth review of where their money's going, what their revenue is, talking it through with the leadership of each department. I really appreciated the analysis, especially that Mike did on each department where, you know, we had a chart for each department and highlighting of some things that maybe we should be aware of. All of that was really, really good. When we started out, we said each individual commissioner was going to be responsible for kind of being the lead questioner on each department. Like I might have water resources and somebody else might have finance or whatever, but that's not really how it turned out. And if we're going to do that, it would be helpful if we did that, because toward the end I was feeling like I had to be, you know, digging kind of deep into everything, every department, and as Commissioner Miller says, we're new, so it was drinking from a fire hose, you know. So I do think if we're going to do that, I would like to see that more defined so that each individual commissioner knows which area they're kind of responsible for and maybe the alternate for, just to make the whole thing go a little smoother. One of the things that I think came out of all of this was that in general, departments tend to underestimate their revenue and overestimate their expenditures, and what that says to me is we're leaving a lot of dollars on the table every year. These are dollars that are already, you know, in our budget and so on, and so I would like us, I don't want us spending money we don't have, but on the other hand, I would like to see us working toward, with the departments, toward what are your expenditures really and what are your revenues, and are they matching? And if there's a big disparity, what should we do with that? And I don't think we answered those questions as we went through that. We just discovered that that was the case. Those were probably my two biggest comments, and I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Commissioner McIlvray.
I would like to commend our staff, as well as yourself, for doing a fine job through this process. It's new to me as well, because this is my first time on finance. But I think the one that really needs to take a lot of credit is Lynn. She was in the middle of administrative change. Lori Van Pelt left, and she took over and did a fabulous job. So.
totally concur, and I want to publicly thank Lynn for being amazing. Other things that you liked, you didn't like? One of the things that I loved what our staff did for us as far as the two-page handout that showed us the graph of how close they were to revenue expense. And again, I want to move toward more even line, you know, that we are on target. When I've worked in other organizations, that was the goal. You want to be within a couple percent of your revenue and your expenditure. And I love the questions. That was a wonderful tool for me personally, you know, in evaluating, kind of zeroing in on the issues. The timing, and this was such a crazy time for all of us, and, you know, but in hindsight, you know, I followed, and we got set back because of some unforeseen circumstances. But historically, we've always started our review right after the county exec would present in July. And that's really way too late. We really should be looking proactively earlier. I know that the county administration historically starts pretty soon, and as the legislative branch, we should be also looking at the budget proactively and say, what do we want, and examining things as an ongoing basis rather than crunch time starting in July. So I would recommend that we start looking at, I don't know what it looks like, but that we start looking at the process sooner versus waiting. And I don't know what the feeling is of this committee, because we are tasked for that. So, Commissioner Colwell.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I've always felt like at the state too, that they get the budget done and then they're done. And to me, that's the time that they should be being more proactive and taking a deeper dive in preparation for the next budget. So I guess based on the budget we just adopted, that if we start studying that a bit sooner to see where we're at, and in anticipation of the proposal from the county exec, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Commissioner Middleton.
Yeah, doesn't the law say that the county exec has to present it to us by July 1st? And then we act on the budget that's presented. And we could gain, because usually it's almost the middle of July before the county exec officially presents it to the, not officially he gives us a copy July 1st. So we could start then. I don't know if we can start much before July 1st, can we, by law?
We're not acting, we're exploring, you know. So here's my,
Well, so since Oakland County does a 3-year budget,
Yeah.
you can almost look at those out years. Now, granted, it is probably gonna change, depending upon how much it's changed over the years. I mean, I'm sure it's within a percentage point on the total budget, but it's something where, and they, you know, we also do quarterly reports and everything like that, but maybe having one-on-one departmental meetings throughout the year might take that process and elongate it, and then get a more in-depth analysis of, okay, this is what's happening in that department, as opposed to, you know, a 2-week or 3-week time span that we get into, so.
it's an ongoing process, and we're not necessarily acting, but we are exercising our fiscal responsibility of overseeing it.
Okay, Linda.
I was just gonna add that. I mean, the county does do the preliminary revenue estimates, presents it to the committee. There is a budget orientation that board staff have attended. So it may be, there might be more participation from commissioners, understanding the assumptions that are being projected with the budget. The presentation of the fiscal plan is usually done in April timeframe. So there is information that's coming forward. It's just not the official pulled together full recommendation that's not presented until July 1st.
Well, maybe if our board staff is coming to that meeting, maybe we bring some of it here or something like that in addition. So, Commissioner Kowal and then Markham.
Yeah, I just have one more comment, and it's about the revenues aligning with the expenditures. I just would like to see that we are well prepared if we ever get hit with another great recession or economic downturns, that we're not having to go into crisis mode with things. So I guess I agree conditionally, but then we must be prepared for whatever comes down the road economically.
I want to comment on that, and I share that as well. And we did hire Mitch Bean and Robert Klein to look at some issues, and we are going to have a presentation from them in December. And I think one of their ideas is talking about having a rainy day fund versus a, fund balance. And I personally would like to have a rainy day fund versus a rolling fund balance, because that's my what happens if, and so looking at how do we prepare.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Markham.
I agree wholeheartedly that we do need to be prepared. It seems to me there's a place for goal setting in all of this. Between the administration and the board, where do we want the county to go and what do we want to be spending our money on in the future? My impression is everything's been kind of doing okay, for the last number of years for a variety of reasons, but I do think longer term, we need to be proactive about where we're going. And so I'd like to see us talk about and do some amount of goal setting with the administration. High level kind of where are we gonna go, so that we do, if there's a big expense or a building that needs to be built or whatever, we're talking about that. Not only the administration making the plans, but also the board. I mean, we are the legislative branch and we should be part of those conversations going forward, so.
Do you have any suggestions about how to do that? And I think it's a good idea.
I've just been exploring it a little bit. The community I came from, we did goal setting every year with the administration as well as the council. And it was actually done electronically. Everybody had their ideas, they were put in, we all kind of looked through them, prioritized. It was not personal in any way. So I have looked into what software they use to do that, and maybe bring that forward as a means. It's kind of a one-day workshop sort of thing. Let's all just sit in a room and kind of throw stuff up there and kick it around and say, where do we want to go? So I just feel like goal setting is something that we should be discussing.
Commissioner McGilfreck.
I think the one thing that helped me was talking to the department heads one-on-one before we went into the budget hearings, so that I could get their past problems, for example, what they'd like to see happen, those kinds of things. When the county executive presents their budget, I'm sure that their staff has been talking to him, but it's what he would like more than what the county should have. And so I think that's important that we get that perspective from that person. Now, that being said, I'm sure that some of those department heads will tell us we need the world, or we're understaffed by 40 people, whatever the case may be. We all have to take that as we go along, but it's important to get their insight as to what's been happening.
Other comments. One of the things that I learned, and we didn't get, I won't call it wish list, but we asked our departments and we heard from them some critical needs that had been presented to the county exec, like security guards in the courtrooms, that I see as a very important value going forward, especially with the cell phones, and that had been presented, but it never came to us before. And so getting some of those requests earlier to integrate into the budget and having, again, is this an important value, you know, part of the goal? I think security in our courtrooms is a really important issue. So, you know, I was glad to hear some of those things and that, you know, there were a bunch of things that we really need to look at sooner versus later. Other comments, questions? I appreciate the feedback, and then we have to decide how we move forward, what's the best process and how we get started. And maybe we'll have another discussion in finance, throw out some ideas, or I would like to hear from all of you if you have suggestions about what we can do to move forward positively, you know, working together. So, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, is there any other business to come before us? Seeing none, committee is adjourned at 10:00.